It's draft day once again around here on Locked on Buckeyes. We are celebrating the last 20 years of Ohio State's success and also celebrating at the same time Ohio State's 0-2 national championship win. The past 3 weeks, we have drafted the best at certain positions on offense over the past 20 years. Today's draft is all about the best defensive lineman at Ohio State since 2002. Some names pop into your minds. Who will we draft in today's episode? Stick around for this episode of Locked on Buckeyes.
You are Locked on Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked on Buckeyes, part of Locked on Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Friday, July 29th in the year 2022, and today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. We are 3 positions in our draft: quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. Today is all about the best defensive linemen, D tackles, and the ends at Ohio State over the past 20 years, going back to the 0-2 season. And here with us once again is Mo Murphy from the Up in Flames podcast. Mo, I'm excited to have you back once again. We have fun during the running back draft. This D-line draft, it's going to be a little bit trickier than some people think it'll be.
Yeah, bro. First off, I'm glad to be back on the show. But yeah, you made me do my homework with this one. This was tough. Like, I spent the past 3 days trying to figure out who deserves to be on here. Am I reaching here? A lot of people might not agree with me if a player gets drafted. So this one's going to be tough because I think of all the positions that you've done, I think this is probably the least amount of depth that I think we have over the past 20 years. Believe it or not, even with the 6-7 year stretch we had of great defensive ends.
It's insane, man. It's insane to think about going back to Tressel's days, to Urban Meyer's days, to Ryan Day's days. Exactly what has happened at Ohio State at this position. Not just D ends, but also D tackles. Both are up in the running for this draft. And you're right. Like, I'm literally, before we started recording, Mo, before you and I hopped in this chat, I was trying to figure out where I'm going to go and put my board together and try to decide this person or that person, or, well, that guy was good, but he was too. Well, here's a D tackle. Where does he fit in? Well, he fits in here, but this guy played D end and D tackle. So it's very, very hard. It's also not just hard to gauge. This is one of those positions that doesn't get a lot of attention. If you're getting sacks or tackles for loss, you're getting attention for that. But outside of that, a lot of things these guys do doesn't get caught up in the stat sheet. You don't find it in the post-game show. And so you don't really get the attention at this position as you would think a lot of guys will. And so it makes it trickier for us, but I love how tricky it is. And I do think listeners and viewers will really enjoy what's going to happen in this show. Mo, is we try to figure out who the best guys are at this position.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, I mean, there's some names. I think the first 2 rounds are going to be easy for the both of us. I think after that last pick and that who would you have picked, your who would you have picked segment for your 4th guy, I think that's where it's going to be like maybe a head scratcher for somebody. I think somebody's going to be like, oh, I even forgot about him, and for him to even made the list. So that's why I think it gets tough. I think the first 4 or 5 guys is easy work, like we talked about before the show. But I think after that is where, like, those last 2 to 3, that who would you have picked with your 4th pick, I think that's where it gets tough.
Here are the rules. The draft, there are 3 rounds. Since Mo is the guest, he gets to go first. It is also a snake draft. And so Mo gets the first pick. I will get the second pick, and then the first pick in the second round, it will be me, Mo, for second pick in the second round. Mo, once again, the first pick in the third, and then I will get the last pick in the draft, as Mo just said, at the very end. The only time Mo and I can pick the same player is when I ask Mo, and then I respond as well after Mo does, who would have been your next pick? Now, lately, I do believe in every draft, the next pick would have been the same person for both, like the same player for both people involved. So it's really interesting. I don't think that'll happen this time, But Mo, I'm done with the rules, done with the groundwork. It's your turn. The floor is yours. Who is your first pick in this draft?
So I'm gonna do it because I can't let you have him. So I have to do it. I'm taking Vernon Goldston.
Wow.
With the number one.
Wow.
Yes.
So, people, I'm going to tell you this really quickly. Mo and I talked a little bit off air, and I was really planning on taking Vernon Goldston early on, but Mo wouldn't let me. I didn't mean to cut you off, Mo. Go right ahead.
You good. So I'm taking Vernon Goldston. We talked about this before the show, and it's like, if I didn't take him now, I won't have him, and I have to. Think about, like, a lot of these guys that you take anyway, their best year was like that single individual year that they had. They build up, and then that year prior to going to the NFL is like really the year that you look at. For him, that'd be 2007, 14 sacks and 15 and a half tackles for loss. In 07, especially, absolutely dominating. Remember, like, of the freak of natures that we've had as of late at the defensive end position, he was the original freak of nature. At least for Ohio State. Like, I know you go way back in time, but for this 20-year time period, like, he's the guy who started it all before we got the other guys that I'm sure we'll get into. So I'm going to take Vernon Goldston. Maybe a little ballsy pick. Maybe people will be like, oh, he could have been there later, but knowing you, Jay, I can't take that chance. So I'm going to take Vernon Goldston number one.
Mo, you took my guy. I'm going to make one comment about him really quickly that I was going to save till later, but when I watched Vernon Goldston play football, this is in my infancy stages, first few years of becoming a Buckeye fan and really falling in love with college football. Mo, I looked at Ohio State and I said, who is that guy out there with all the muscles that's always in the backfield? That's so big, so strong, so fast. I'm in high school, and so I love the thought of a defensive lineman who's always in the backfield wearing an Ohio State jersey. I love that. But, buddy, he had muscles popping out everywhere. And I'm going back, and, of course, I try to watch a little highlight film before coming on here, so I know a little bit of what I'm talking about. The muscles still pop out to me. All like back 06, 07 until now 2022, the muscles still pop off. Mo, you leave me no choice to take the next two guys. And
I know where you're going.
I appreciate you kind of helping me out and giving me kind of this layup, kind of like we're playing basketball. We're on the same team and not trying to fight against each other. We're literally on the same team, and you give me that perfect alley-oop, and your boy can't dunk in real life, but in 2K I can. I'll go for the alley-oop and put that thing in. Mo, the next pick for me is Chase Young, and this one was kind of easy. The next pick is going to be easy as well. There's another guy that's played years ago that I could pick down the road. But Chase Young was easy. Chase Young was an easy pick. I do have the next two picks, and I'll explain why I picked Young and then Joey Bosa. But Chase Young was easy. You want to talk about stats and what Chase Young did at Ohio State in 2018, 13 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks. You think after that he's going to be a guy going to get double team, triple team. He's going to be somebody that won't have the same numbers, but will still be a high NFL draft pick. 2019, 21 tackles for loss, 16.5 sacks, and 46 tackles. It's insane to think about the ability that he had as Ohio State's D end in Ohio State. That 2019 team and season was so special. 2018 was as well. But, man, I had to go with Chase Young. You gave me no choice, and I appreciate you leaving him on the board for me to take at this time. And then Joey Bosa, to me, he was different. And when I look at guys like Joey Bosa, sometimes he's like, okay, well, does he play D end? Yes. Can he play D tackle? Yes. Can he get sacks at both positions? Yes. Can he penetrate at both positions? Yes. Can he get tackles for loss? Can he get sacks? Yes. Can he beat double teams at both positions? Yes. It was kind of almost like, what can't he do? And Joey Bosa is one of those guys that I think Nick Bosa gets a lot more attention right now because of what he's doing in the NFL. But Joey is doing this for not doing great things as well for the Chargers. And Joey was that guy that you knew you had to give a lot of attention to because if he did not, it really would not be good. 2014 was his best statistical year. 21.5 tackles for loss, 13.5 sacks, 55 tackles. He followed that up the following year with 16 tackles for loss in 2015 and 51 tackles of his own. Chase Young, Joey Bosa. Mo, you made it so easy. But the scary thing is, Mo, you got the next 2 picks. I don't know where you're going, but I appreciate you giving me those 2 guys to take in this draft.
Yeah, I mean, so real quick before I pick, Chase Young was going to be my number 1 pick.
Mm-hmm.
But then, I'm like, okay, then you'll turn around and you'll get Joey and Goldston. That's why I was like, so no matter who I go out of those 3, the next 2 guys, I feel like those are going to be the first 3 guys. So I just had to take Goldston, especially he was the one I was most amazed with just because I was like 13 years old when he was playing. So it was like just what he did at that time. And he was like the trend. He set the tone for the Chase Youngs, the Joey Bosa. And so with my next pick, I'm going to go Joey Bosa's little brother. I'm going to go with Nick Bosa. I have to, and it's just based off of talent. Now, his last year, his junior year, remember he got hurt, never came back to the team. I know a person who was very upset about that was Jeff. If I'm not mistaken, what was that? That was the year we lost to Clemson, right? Or was that after? Who did we lose?
2018, we lost to Purdue.
Lost to Purdue. That's what it was. But Bosa was out. He played 3 games that year. Was supposed to come back, then said he wasn't coming back because I guess Ohio State didn't handle the injury right or whatever, and he was preparing for the NFL. But just based off pure talent, remember, Nick was supposed to be better than Joey. Yes, Chase Young came in after Nick, and Chase Young was supposed to be better than both of them, which I think he was. So just off of talent, projected talent, and I mean, his best year was 2017, 8.5 sacks, 16 tackles for losses, 34 total tackles. But remember, he was fighting through double teams because Chase Young was a freshman that year. So, and Chase Young didn't even necessarily play that much that year. I forget who the other defensive end was opposite him, but we knew Chase Young was seeing some flashes, getting some playing time. So we knew he was next up, but he wasn't even a starter at that time. And just based off of pure talent, I got to take Nick Bosa. So the next pick, this is when it gets tough. It gets really, really tough. You could go so many different ways and names. I feel like, oh man, Jay, you put the pressure on me. I'm gonna play it safe. I'm gonna go Cam Hayward. I'm gonna go Cam Hayward. He was good at Ohio State. I wouldn't say he was great. He wasn't Goldston or Young or Joey, maybe more Nick Bosa. But the one thing he has been since the day he stepped on the Ohio State field and on the rest of his career has just been consistent. You know what you're going to get from him. You knew what you were going to get from him at Ohio State. Led the same way. He was a first-round pick, so he couldn't have been too bad. But it's been consistency. That's been the story of his career. So I'm going to go Cam Hayward just because even when you put this graphic together or people are listening, I'm going to get a lot of respect for that pick just because people are going to think about his overall career and kind of forget only his Ohio State day. So I know I'm going to get a little bit of credit for being able to add him on the back end.
So one of the things with me and Nick Bosa, and this might rub some fans the wrong way, is that I had a requirement that you had to have at least one season. Now, for granted, for a guy on my list who I will get to in a second because I think I'm going to take him next. Sometimes stats weren't always available for players, defensive stats, going to sportsreference.com. They really didn't keep track of all the stats like they do now. But one of my requirements was you had to have at least one double-digit tackle for lost season, and then you got more. You moved up my board if you had 2 seasons of at least 10 or more tackles for loss. The one thing with Nick Bosa is that 2018 season, he would have automatically been in my top 4, maybe even bet higher than Joey when it comes to my big board for this. But he got hurt and didn't I'm not injuries happen, bro. Don't get me wrong, injuries happen. But he ultimately got hurt, and that was it. Played a few games, didn't come back for the rest of the season. So that's part of the reason why he was not as high up on my board. I probably would have gone somebody else if I had the 4th pick in this draft. But your draft, and it makes sense. You go off talent, he might be one of the most talented or most talented guys in this thing. So it makes a lot of sense. With Cam Hayward, though, you can't go wrong. And I think that's one of the biggest things there is you cannot go wrong. To recap a little bit of where we are in this point in this draft, first pick in the draft, the best D lineman at Ohio State, over the past 20 years, this dates back to the 2002 season. Mo Murphy went with Vernon Goldston, the guy that had all the muscles, did all the push-ups for breakfast. I went with Chase Young, second pick in the draft. First pick in the second round, snake draft as well. I went with Joey Bosa. Mo went with Nick Bosa in the second round. The Bosa brothers go back to back. In the first pick of the third round, Mo went with Cam Hayward. And then now you made this easy for me, bro. Like, this was literally easy. The one guy, national championship, 2002. The Buckeyes did phenomenal things. They upset the Miami Hurricanes in the 03 Fiesta Bowl, the 02 BCS National Championship game. It is Will Smith. Now, we have discussed numerous guys that have had 20 or more tackles for loss in this draft. I have one here, or Chase Young at 21. Another guy that got drafted also by me was Joey Bosa, had 21 and a half tackles for loss. So maybe this is just a 20 or more tackles for loss little section that I have here, because I did a little search, and in 03, Will Smith had 20 tackles for loss in that year. The year after the Buckeyes won the national championship, there were no stats for tackles for loss, sacks that were, of course, they're kept. But when I went to sportsreference.com, I could not see that. So bear with me and be like, Jay, why didn't you? I didn't see it. But I can't go anywhere else than Will Smith right now. It's unfortunate he's no longer with us. One of the things I love about this is that his son, who, for many of you that are in the recruiting, he's a 3-star D lineman in the state of Ohio, I do believe, and he is doing everything he can to get better. He's already committed to Ohio State, and so that lineage and that family's name will stay at Ohio State. But Will Smith, man, you once again, Mo, if we playing basketball, buddy, you Steve Nash. All I got to do is just run the paint, run the court, run that sideline, and I'm going to get open either for a three, hit me with the alley-oop, maybe Steve Nash, Amari Stoudemire connection in the dunk contest. It don't really matter, buddy, because you just laying stuff up for me. All I got to do is finish it. That's the goal. I appreciate it, Mo. I got Will Smith because that dude was a dog.
So I remember, so it's crazy. So I remember watching Will Smith. I remember went to the Saints, was good with the Saints. The only reason I put it in question, I know it's since 2002. So he did play, 2 seasons under, but then like being able to look, like I remember how good he was, but I more remember him from the Saints. Yes. So actually going back and seeing his stats, I ran into the same problem with you as you. The stats weren't there, like even on Sports Reference, and that's where every statistic category you ever want to find is there for a player. Like all these guys' stats, that's why I went. And so they weren't there. And so I know how good he was, but I remember him. Yeah, think about it, I was 6, 7 years old, 8 years old around that time. So I remember him. Maurice Claret is one of my favorite players, but I more so know Will Smith from the Saints. Like I know he played at Ohio State. I watched him play at Ohio State, but his high level of play, I remember him more in New Orleans. So that's kind of why I didn't go with him, was just the vivid memory. And then he probably would have been my 4th guy, maybe. Nah, he wasn't the 4th guy in my mind, which we about to get into. I think we might have the same 4th guy, actually.
Who is your 4th guy, Mo? You already know the drill. This is the only time that Mo and I can have the same player as we select him, because this is no longer a part of the 3-round draft. This is just so who would have been next. Mo, who you got?
Michael Bennett. I'm
we
actually
don't have the same guy. And I'm gonna explain mine in a second, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm going Michael Bennett, defensive lineman, national championship. Just got to throw that out there. As you know, he played with us in the national championship. But you got to think about it. He had 2 seasons with double-digit tackles for loss. He had 2 seasons with 7 sacks. The same 2 seasons, he had 7 sacks apiece. And then he won the national championship. Like, he played with us and won a national championship. So that boosts him up there as far as, and then he was also playing alongside Joey Bosa. So for him to still have 7 sacks, you know how dominant he was, to be in double-digit tackles for loss, had to be a dominant player, especially playing alongside a guy like Joey Bosa, where his name kind of got lost in the sauce. And then you hear Michael Bennett and you think of like the Michael Bennett, like the really good NFL player Michael Bennett. You're not thinking about the interior defensive lineman that used to play at Ohio State. But yeah, he would have been my 4th guy.
So mine is going against the grain. I know I just described how you move up my board, but This player does not, he had one season of double-digit tackles for loss. He had 13 and a half tackles for loss in 2017. He also had 7 sacks and 42 tackles in that year. But the previous 2 seasons he played at Ohio State, at 8 tackles for loss in 2015, 8.5 TFLs in 2016, 46 tackles. It was his career high for one season in 2016. I'm going with Sam Hubbard. This is more of a fan favorite of mine. I have loved Sam Hubbard. I think that he was one of the guys that if you put him in this conversation, he's not going to be a Will Smith. He won't be looked at as a Will Smith, a Vernon Goldston, a Michael Bennett, a Cam Hayward. He'll never be in that conversation, but I loved how solid he was. I loved how he was able to, even on the opposite side of a player like a Bosa, he knew, I'm going to get less attention than these guys, but can I still be disruptive and pull some of the attention away from them and pull it to me just occasionally to help him get loose? And Sam Hubbard knew, I'm never going to be that. I'm going to be a household name in Buckeye land. Will I be a household name around the country? Probably not. But Sam Hubbard, with how solid he was, and even with them being just literally that guy that Ohio State needed at this time, whatever you want to say about Urban Meyer and his coaching style and the things he did in Jacksonville and all that stuff, you can say it. You can't say Urban Meyer's teams weren't tough. D-line, linebacker, safety, even going to the offensive side of the ball. And Sam Hubbard was a guy who was extremely tough for the Buckeyes. And yeah, you say, Jay, he had one season of 10 or more TFLs. He's on your big board. Why didn't you move him up higher? Because he didn't have 2. Well, he was up higher because he wasn't up higher because of, well, the other guys are better. But also, if I could take him in the 4th pick, Sam Hubbard's my guy, because he was just that good to me. And I'll be talking about Sam Hubbard and what he did at Ohio State, for probably the next 20, 30, 40 years.
So, Jay, let me ask you a question. It's with Sam Hubbard, but it's off Buckeyes topic, but we still keep it in the state of Ohio. Based on expectations, at this point, is he the most successful defensive player that was drafted today in the NFL? Based on expectations, is he having the most success when you think about what he's done in the NFL up to this point, based off what he was expected to do? Like, we knew Nick and Joey were going to be stars. We knew Chase Young was supposed to be a star. He got hurt. Vernon Goldston kind of fell off pretty quickly in the NFL. Sam Hubbard just played in a Super Bowl. Like, he just played in a Super Bowl and was a key piece coming off of the edge for the Cincinnati Bengals on defense. Based on expectations, is he not, like, the most successful? Like, are you taking numbers? Or are you taking what he means to the team and his team's success based on the success he has had at the position? Like, does he not have a spot in that conversation?
He absolutely does. He absolutely has a spot in the conversation. Think about some guys that were really successful, that were on teams that were really, really good, that won Super Bowls. I believe Will Smith was on that Saints team that won a Super Bowl. Michael Bennett, I do believe he has a Super Bowl. Sam Hubbard in the Bengals, really, really good. There were some holes there that got exposed, and that got exposed throughout the season, throughout the playoffs. But when you think about what he was at Ohio State and playing up to and maybe exceeding expectations once he got to the National Football League, even during his early stages as a professional football player, he's up there. He's definitely up there in that conversation. The scary thing is, though, he can get better. Like,
he's getting better every year since he's been
Chase Young is cold. The Bosa brothers are cold. Will Smith was cold. Sam Hubbard can get better. As scary as that is, and you might say, Jay, is he going to be a household name? Will he be somebody that people talk about all over the league? I think people in NFL circles talk about what Sam Hubbard is doing, and will do in Cincinnati. I think the Bengals fans are happy that Sam Hubbard is in Cincinnati. I think he can get better. He's already been a solid piece for the Bengals already. He's someone that you have to make sure in your game plan, you know where he is, know what he's doing, don't overlook him. It's a good thought. Didn't think it was going to come up during today's show, but Mo, he's cold, man. And you think about expectations, he may have exceeded them, which is saying a lot.
Because I'm not saying he's like, and when asking that, I'm not saying, he's the best one out of everybody. No, because expectations, Chase Young, top 5 pick. Joey Bosa, top 5 pick. Nick Bosa, top 5 pick. So them being Pro Bowlers and, they're not at future Hall of Fame level yet, but later on down the line in their prime, if we look at them as future Hall of Famers, well, they were top 5 picks. So that's the expectation. But for Sam Hubbard, like the only other player on this list that has had I'll say success based on team, but only one whose name has been called making plays deep in the playoffs, which I know isn't fully on Hubbard or fully on Nick Bosa, but those have been the 2 players who have had their names called, making plays, sacks, tackles deep into the playoffs. And so based on expectation, like Hubbard what did he get drafted in, like the 3rd or 4th round?
Something like that. It wasn't a high pick, no.
Yeah, he was a 3rd or 4th round pick, so he's like a plug-and-play guy. Like, that's kind of maybe a guy who finds his way a couple years, ends up not on the Bengals no more. Somebody else is reluctant to sign him, whatever. Like, he kind of bounces around, plays 8-9 years, but is never a big name. But this guy's making plays deep into the playoffs. Like, this guy sacked Matt Stafford in the Super Bowl. Like, I'm not saying, like I said, he's not the most talented. He's not the best one on this list, but just based off expectations and how his career has gone so far, he's gotten better every year. And deep in the playoffs, due to the success of the Cincinnati Bengals and Burrow and all that, his name has been called on your TV screen in the most important moments because he was making plays in those games that matter the most, which is in the playoffs. So that's why I say, like, based on expectation, like, he's in the conversation with all these guys as far as, like, we didn't think Sam Hubbard would be a guy who is an important name that you game plan for heading into the Super Bowl. We thought that would be Chase Young and Joey Bosa and Nick Bosa, whatever. Like, those are the guys you game plan for night in, night out. And like Sam Hubbard, even if he's tier 2 of that conversation, teams play Cincinnati. And like you said, they got to account for Sam Hubbard. So for him to even be there in that conversation, I think, like, based on 4th round pick and what he's done up to this point, I'm like, he might have had the most success based on expectations up to this point.
Man, this is fun, man. I love this draft season. We're going to do some more things leading up to the year. Next Friday, where we're going to have our drafting of the linebackers, best LBs over the past 20 years. I do believe, let me check my calendar really quickly for that draft. I do believe it's our buddy, Jeff Hunt. Yep, Jeff Hunt will be back here next Friday for that draft. The week after, the plan is to have Corey Thompson back on for the DB draft. And then we'll do some things the following 2 Fridays leading up to the start of the season following 2 Fridays leading up to the start of the season to just celebrate just that 0-2 season. Discuss the national championship win, discuss what that season meant for Ohio State and some special things that come after that came from that. So this is all fun. But I do love having Mo Murphy on the show. Mo, if you could, let everyone know they can follow you on Twitter and then where they can listen to your podcast as well.
Yeah, you can follow me at Mo_Cheese15 on Twitter. You can listen to Up in Flames podcast pretty much anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify. And also, subscribe to my Substack at upinflamespod.substack.com. I be forgetting sometimes. But yeah, subscribe to that as well. I release my podcast there, do some clips. Follow me on TikTok at Mo_Cheese15 and then follow me on Instagram at Up in Flames Pod. Just to even get some clips. Sometimes I don't record a whole episode, but put some, ideas I have, clip it up, whatever, and just talk about little single things that come out day in, day out. Tomorrow I'll be talking about Kyler Murray and a few other things that have come out. Camp has started, so a couple other storylines and plays you get to talk about. It's just the little stuff that everybody wants to hear about. So, yeah, even if I don't drop an episode, I'll drop my thought on some breaking news or whatever. Probably even talk about DK Metcalf. So, but I appreciate you for having me on, bro. I love coming on Locked On Buckeyes. Anytime I can do a show and only talk about the Buckeyes, I'm always in.
I love it. I absolutely love it, guys. You can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. Some of you are wondering, or maybe it's yesterday's episode had a little issues recording. That episode will come out later on Friday, recapping the Big Ten Media Days. We're not going to alleviate or go away from that conversation at all. Subscribe to the YouTube page. We'll try and do more of these short clips from these videos so that you can enjoy the episodes and short clips in a little shorter section, not 20, 25 minutes, but more, maybe 5 to 10, maybe 12 to 15 minutes. Sit down, TV, computer, phone, wherever you are. Get some Locked On Buckeyes. Get your fix whenever you want it. We're out here on this Friday. Remember, one more show coming later today to discuss and recap the Big Ten Media Days. And I love having Mo on. I also love it's almost football season. And before you know it, the Buckeyes will be reporting to fall camp. We'll be discussing that very soon. And before you know it, the Buckeyes will be facing the Notre Dame Fighting Irish September 3rd, week 1 of the season. I see Mo's face. You hear my voice. We can't wait. And, buddy, this season is going to be so much fun. I hope you're ready for what's to come in the fall.